Lately, it seems like every single time we take out our phone, there is more bad news waiting for us. And I know this can feel so heavy. But even worse, when we get into this pattern of doom scrolling, of really being so hyper aware of all the bad things happening in the world, one thing that can really go by the wayside is our ability to lean into our own creative impulses. But unfortunately, if we want to change the world for the better, this is the exact wrong impulse. And that's why today I want to talk about the importance of creativity when the world is burning. Stay tuned. You've been writing your memoir, maybe even for years. You know your material, you know what it means. What's missing isn't the story, it's the structure. And that's why we started the Memoir Method Book Club. Every single month, Emily Thrash, a professional writer and editor, teaches you how to read like a writer by breaking down a published memoir and showing you what it's doing under the surface. Your first session is free. Head over to pageandpodium.com/book-club to sign up. Unfortunately, we are living in a time when every time you open up your phone, there is more bad news. Sometimes, particularly when I get into social media, I feel like everyone around me is just steeped in this mixture of rage and fear and uncertainty and disbelief often, and just this hope that someone will come to save us. This feeling that we're so unstable, things are so uncertain, that there's really no way to move forward. And that really was what sparked me wanting to do this episode, not only because I feel that way myself, although I do, but also because as I have been working with my clients over the last few months, one thing that I have really started to see is that not only is kind of being so enmeshed in all of the world's bad news, not only is that, of course, slowing down our projects, all of us, but also I'm starting to see a little bit of mindset shift among my clients where rather than, okay, I'm staying informed, I'm reading the news, I need to know what's going on so that I can act in the way that's going to make things as marginally better as I possibly can. When we are in the middle of all of that, instead of keeping that separate from our creative expression, oftentimes what I'm seeing is clients who feel that they're really not allowed, they're really not supposed to be engaging in any kind of creativity, any kind of expression, really anything that feels good. And that's why I wanted to get in here and really talk about this, because I think I'm going to be able to give you a mindset shift that will help you find the real hope and joy and comfort and stability that you can find just through your own mental space, that you can find on your own regardless of what is happening around you. And that tool, spoiler alert, is going to be creativity. Now, I think you all know I have been really deeply invested in a lot of social movement work. I was a social movement historian when I worked at the University of Memphis, and of course, I'm still pretty deeply connected to a lot of folks in that community. As I have seen this community that I lived in for almost a decade, where I loved the people there, I loved my students, I worked with some people that were doing amazing things. And as I'm seeing them go through some of these really hard things, I really can understand why it starts to feel selfish to look at your own work, why it starts to feel like if you are focused on your own creative work, your own projects, you are somehow neglecting all of the people that are outside of you. All of these people who are suffering, who need support, who really are desperate for someone to help them. Oftentimes, I think we feel like we need to abandon our own stuff, even if really we have no hope or position to really be able to help in the way that I know we want to at all. So what I want to do is really reframe this, because my goal here is not to tell you not to worry about the world around you. Absolutely not. I think staying informed, being really aware of what's going on, I think that is so important, more important than ever. So I'm not going to tell you to ignore that stuff or shove it back. But what I do want to tell you is that these two worlds, the world of all the stuff going on and the world of you creatively expressing yourself, of leaning into who you are as a human, these two worlds do not have to be separate. And in fact, the more separate they are, the less effective we are going to be at these forward-moving actions I know you want to make. at supporting the people that need us, at moving forward to try to make this world a better place. The more we can combine the social, the community, with the self-expression, I promise you, the more engaged we will be, the more effective we will be, and the more energy we'll have to keep doing that. And at the heart of that, and kind of the first point that I want to make here, at the heart of this relationship really is not kind of productivity, it's not kind of getting things done, checking things off the list. It's not, I would argue, even about dopamine. Although, certainly, we know from science that there are kind of dopamine bursts we get from that doom scrolling action. But rather, instead of kind of thinking about it that way, I want you to think about creativity as a key to community. Let me kind of back up a little bit here because there's a couple things we've got to pick apart before we can really make sense of this. Now, the first is, what do I mean by creativity? And of course, this is quite a broad term, so we could define this all kinds of ways. But really, anytime I'm talking about creativity, what I'm looking at is the way that our inner self, and you can call this, your soul, you can call this your inner being, you can just call this your personality, but the way that who you are at your core is getting out. Because all of us really, that is such an innate need that we have this piece of us in our core, and oftentimes we are really incentivized for pushing it down, right? This happens when we're kind of pressured to be a certain type of professional at work, right? We've got to push down parts of our personality to make sure that we can keep that livelihood. Sometimes, as children, we are really raised up to kind of suppress the parts of ourselves that are, this makes me so sad, energetic and joyful, because oftentimes those things are inconvenient to the adults around us. So we learn that we've got to push that stuff down, tamp that stuff down. But that piece of us, it isn't really tamp downable. That piece of us is always there and it always wants to come out. The problem is, the more we tamp it down, the more that kind of urgency to get it out is going to start to feel pretty intense. It starts to feel like burnout. It can start to feel like depression. And it can really start to feel as though we're kind of isolated and lost. We're not really connected to anybody else. And the reason is, when we find real community, usually we don't find community just kind of on the surface level pieces of our personality, although that's often a start. Usually when we find and feel real community, it's not from anything surface level. It's because we felt safe to pull out this inner part of ourselves and share it with others. And oftentimes, when we can make ourselves feel safe doing that, there's reciprocation, right? We see that from the people who are meant to be in our community. Not everyone will do this, but we'll start to feel this sense of reciprocity that we are sharing our real selves. And y'all, what could be more important to making the world a better place than making sure that that place is inhabited by people who feel their true selves and who are sharing that with others and who are finding community? No, not with everyone, but with a group of people that makes them feel safe. And this is the connection I really want to tease out today. So let's kind of start by talking about the problem kind of as we're all seeing it in our lives, because I'm hearing this from so many people. I suspect this is about as universal of a situation as I'm going to have on this channel. So let's dig into it. What is the problem? Well, tell me if this sounds familiar to you. You wake up in the morning. Of course, our first instinct is to grab the phone off the nightstand. I used to look to see if I had any fun texts. I wanted to see if anybody had sent me any reels on Instagram or Facebook. I wanted to kind of look at my calendar. I like to look at my calendar and see what the day ahead has in store so I can kind of get amped up for it, kind of get excited for what I've got for the day. Used to be. Now, I feel like every single time I grab my phone, and those things that I might have instinctively gone for first, now I get kind of sidetracked. Now I've got a bunch of news alerts, right? And part of this is that I have trained my news algorithm to know that there are some particular things that I'm especially interested in learning more about. So some of these global and national conflicts are things that pop up on my phone just pretty much every single morning. So pretty much every single morning, I'm starting with a piece of bad news. And I really felt like this kind of came out to me in a way that I hadn't experienced it so fully before. I was on a call with a client, and it was a really early call, actually. I think it was like 7:30 or something like that, her time. And when we got on the call, I said like, oh, how's your day? How you do? And she was like, not good. And I said, oh my gosh, it's so early to feel like that already. And she was like, well, I shouldn't listen to the news. And oh my gosh, if this isn't the most seemingly universal feeling in this world that we're in right now, I don't know what is. But here is the problem. What we think we are doing is really teaching ourselves this information. We really think that we are kind of going through all of this news because we want to be informed, because we want to know if there's something that we can do to help. I know we only have the best of intentions. But the problem with this approach is that what we're really doing is just consuming. We're consuming and consuming and consuming and consuming and consuming. And yes, our brains are very adaptable. Our brains can take that information in, particularly when we are getting, the same types of topics over and over. Our brain does a pretty good job of kind of lumping stuff together, creating the synaptic connections that we need to really, connect one thing to another. Our brains are really good at that. But at the same time, anytime you are consuming, you have got all of the direction coming into you and none of the direction coming out of you. So let me kind of put this into a metaphor, because I think this is helpful to really, really visualize how harmful this can be to our spirits, to our psyche. So as we are pulling in more and more things, we're consuming more and more things. Think about what this would be like if you lived in your house and instead of ever getting rid of anything, you never donated anything, you never even threw anything away, you never sold anything, you just consumed. Well, at first, you might be able to keep fairly well organized, right? You've got a junk drawer, you can put a lot of stuff in there, you've got your closets, you can get some of those hangers that collapse, so you can put more things in there. There are things you can do to try to make sure that things stay organized at first. But the more you consume, the more you're going to just simply run out of space. It is going to become a really, really unhealthy environment for you because there's just simply no room to move. And oftentimes, when I start to feel like I have bought too many things, when I start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm buying a lot of yarn, or I'm buying a lot of clothes, or whatever it is, one thing that for me is always kind of reassuring is if I can kind of go into wherever I've got that item stored and kind of look and say, well, you know what? Actually, there are a few things here that I don't need anymore. But, actually, I think I was pretty responsible. I've got space for everything. Let's kind of get it organized and get a reset. And the reason that I want to point that out is that is so similar to what's happening when we are just doom scrolling. We're bringing information in. But because we are not sharing our information out, we don't have any kind of external community to help us process that, right? We don't have any space for things like joy or hope or enthusiasm or even strategy. We don't have any space for all of those things that could help us. And that's why the point that I want to make here is that when we are consuming, we think that we are fueling ourselves. We think that we are putting into our bodies and minds the things that we need. But what I want to suggest is that very often when we get into an overconsumption mode with news or anything else, very often we are not actually nourishing ourselves. We're just feeding ourselves. What I mean by that is we are putting things into our body, but we are not thinking about what that is going to look like down the line. We're not having this sort of sense of ourselves now, what we can do for ourselves now as self-care, but also we don't have a sense of what we can do for our future selves, self-care. And as y'all know, if you don't start caring for yourself now, eventually your body and mind are going to make you care for yourself. So when we are thinking about this consuming, I want to shift that a little bit. And I want to start to think about it as nourishing. I wonder what would change if we really thought about ourselves not as a consuming machine, but as a real human person that is pulling things in because our entire spirit is about pushing things forward. What would that mean? What if we balance those two things? And that really brings me to the next point that I want to make, which is that this type of consumption exhausts us in far more ways than one. And I want to bring this into kind of, I think, a nuanced sort of comparison of how we can think about the consumption as well as the expression working together instead of at odds with one another. So the example that I want to give here is a way that we will often tell ourselves that we are balancing consumption and expression, that our consumption is valuable because we are also expressing. And that is through this social media share button. Now, one thing that I find is when I kind of talk about this consumption expression kind of paradigm, oftentimes people will sort of relate to it as though they are actually expressing, because when they read those articles on their social media feed, they share them. Sometimes they'll even kind of put a little blurb about what they took away. Now, here's where I want to caution you. When we start to get into this overconsumption mode, one thing that is really, really common is that we stop being able to hear our own voice. And there are really two dimensions for this. The first one is because we are bringing in so much information, we're consuming. Because we are doing that, we really can't hear ourselves. We lose sight of kind of what is that inner part of you? What is it wanting to express? That's kind of the easier one to identify. But the other one I want to share with you is that oftentimes when we are consuming, it's not even really that our voice gets drowned out. It's that we adapt our voice to the voice that we are reading. Now, this is transparently true if you have done any amount of writing where you also were reading alongside the writing, which you should actually, it's really good for you. But one thing that you will see is if you start reading one author just kind of consistently while you are doing a lot of writing, very often your writing voice will start to sound a lot like that author that you have been reading. Well, what's going on? Our brains are pattern-forming machines. Our brains form these kind of clusters and connections of different relationships of the things that we know. And one of those is that we know how language pieces fit together. But there's a lot of variety, right? So the more that we are getting other people's ways of putting sentences together into our body, the more that the things that come out through our expression are going to look pretty similar. Well, what does this mean for doom scrolling? I think this is one of the major things that we need to be looking at just as folks who want the world to be better in the future. And that is that when we are doom scrolling and then expressing from the place of consuming all of that bad news, very often it's not necessarily just that our voices drown out. It's that we have adopted the voices of others. But the problem is, we live in such an information-saturated world that all of the takes have probably been taken. And as we are sharing things on our social media, we really are just sharing more of the same. Well, what does it feel like when we are trying to express something and we understand that it's neither unique or original or particularly connected to our own spirit? What does that feel like? I would argue what that feels like is despair. What that feels like is shouting into a void. And the reason is when we are just consuming the same thing all the time and we let that thing set the parameters for how we are going to express ourselves, what happens is that ourselves become that pain. It's so bad. It's so bad. So, kind of having laid out how I'm thinking about this issue, I do want to give you some solutions. And in fact, the thing that I want to push you toward is just a three-prong way to think about your creativity when we are in these really difficult times, when we are these times when it just feels like the world is burning around you. So, what's the solution? Kind of gave it away. The solution, of course, is that we need to really stay in touch with our creative expression when things feel bad more than ever. But because I've already kind of let you know, one of the pitfalls of this is that we can think we are expressing ourselves when actually all we're doing is kind of following the pack. Because that is a pitfall here, I want to give you a set of 3 guardrails that you can use to really make sure that you're really thinking about how you want to express yourself, your experience, your expertise. How do you want to share with others the way that you are seeing the world? Because we need that. So there's 3. The first thing is as you are creating, whatever that is that you decide to create, I want you to create with no pressure. Now, what I mean by that is that as you are creating, I do not want you to put the weight of the world on your shoulders. It is so easy to believe that it is each of our sole responsibility for saving all of the world. But remember, we do not save the world as individuals. That is not a common way that happens. Usually, when things are kind of altered, when things move forward in a progressive way, a way that feels good, it's usually not one person, it's community. And remember what I said earlier in this video, that when we are in touch with our creative selves, when we are expressing ourselves, that's the only way that we form those types of rich, deep communities where we really do actually have some power as a collective. So, when you are thinking about expressing yourself under this first parameter, no pressure. You are not saving the world. You are not writing a bestseller. You are not doing even anything to pull yourself out of the depths. All you are doing is creating. You're not going to put any kind of pressure on yourself to create in a particular way. So that's the first thing. The second requirement, this is the most important one. I shouldn't have put it second. That is, you must create with joy. Now, here is where it gets really hard. Oftentimes, I find that folks, especially who are really committed in the safety and security of those around us, what often happens is that when we start to think about feeling joyful at a time when things are so heavy, it just feels selfish. It feels like we should not do that. We'll start to label it in ourselves as privilege. And here's what I want to tell you. If there is no joy, there is no point. Joy and love, that is literally what we are fighting for. We are fighting for people in times of war to experience joy and hope and love and community. We are fighting for people who are in the middle of some of these urban battles to have that love and joy and safety and freedom. That is quite literally the point. So when we tell ourselves that leaning into joy, leaning into love, when we tell ourselves that that's selfish, we are actively working against the thing we're trying to do politically, actively. So as you are creating through these times that feel so heavy, I promise you, it is the most important political investment that you can make to stay in touch with your joy. What is that joyful form of expression and healing and receiving that we want for everyone? Do that, because it will do us no good to solve all of the world's problems if the cost of that solution is all of our joy and love. It does us nothing. So as you are creating, as you are expressing yourself, lean into the joy. It should feel good. It should feel good and organic and unique to you. It should feel so soul nourishing. Lean into that. Okay, and then the third parameter I want to give you as you are leaning into this creative expression is I want you to create with a purpose. Now, the purpose that you are creating with is not to save the world. It is not to make sure no one ever experiences anything bad around you. The purpose, rather, is to find truth. Now, remember what I said earlier? We're reading all of these things. The takes have all been taken. So many hot takes in this world. But actually, when we start to get in touch with who we are, what we uniquely know from our experiences, that actually often is the place that these fresh perspectives come from. It often is the place and has historically been the place where new ways of looking at these situations really arise. And oh my gosh, y'all, we need some of this. We in this world need some of these strategies that are driven toward truth. We need it desperately. So as you are creating, I don't want you to think about whether you're fitting into somebody or somebody else's take on whatever news story it is. Instead, I want you to stay so focused on what it is you know to be true. The more we can feed that piece of ourselves, nourish ourselves by saying, I trust you to know. I trust you to keep me safe. I trust that we will come out of this, all of us, and we will be okay. Create from that place. Even if you don't believe it, even if you think it might all be taken away tomorrow, it might. All we can do now is create today from this place where we are not pressuring ourselves, this place where we are fully in touch with our joy, and this place where the purpose of our creation is to get a truer sense of how we understand the world, not how all the people we have consumed understand the world. Okay, I hope that this has been a useful check-in. Really, I think one of the things that we can do for this world right now is work toward ways that keep us sustainable. When we pour out all of our energy into consuming all of this bad news, ultimately what we are doing is cutting ourselves off at the feet. We are keeping ourselves from being able to move forward because we don't have any grounding, and the grounding has to come from ourselves and our community. All of that comes from our creative expression. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. If you would like to reach out, chat a little bit about how you can get some structured support for whatever project it is that you are doing, ideally memoir or nonfiction book, please head over to pageandpodium.com/contact. You can make a call to have an appointment with me, chat about whether we can help you. Otherwise, please be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Happy writing. You know that feeling when a book just hits you? Not because the story is wild, but because it's shaped so intentionally that it almost makes you rethink your own story. You finish that last page and think, how did they do that? The structure, the honesty, the clarity. There's something under the surface that you just can't put your finger on. And the reason is, unless someone shows you how memoirs actually work, it's hard to translate that inspiration into your own writing. And that's exactly why we created the Memoir Method Monthly Book Club. If you want to join Emily Thrash every single month to dig into an exemplary memoir and figure out what's happening under the surface, head over to pageandpodium.com/book club. Your first month is free, and we can't wait to welcome you to the group.